Coming up, the SEC's highest profile quarterback competitions took center stage this weekend. We'll tell you what happened in Tuscaloosa and in Athens next, right here on SEC Country Live. Hello everyone, welcome to SEC Country Live. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Alabama All-American Mike Johnson. Hope you had a great weekend and looking forward to a great week of SEC talk. Aftermath of a few spring games, preview of a few more coming up this Saturday. A lot going on around the league this time of year.
A little bit of football on TV Saturday for a lot of people. Man, that really gets my juices flowing to see the ball being thrown around. Boy, that was a good day.
Although you can make a case that the most interesting football being played in the SEC this weekend actually took place away from the watchable eye of TV cameras. Let's start with that. Item number one here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. And by the way, apologize for the late start here today. I was a little late in getting to the desk today, so we apologize for that. But as the captain says, when you fly, we'll make up the time in the air here. Nonetheless, let me do item number one here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. The Alabama quarterback competition once again, center stage during a Bama spring scrimmage. We'll get to what Nick Saban had to say about that coming up in a moment, but it's what other folks are saying about this right now that's sort of getting some attention here, including the former Alabama player himself, Vinny Cincinnati, sort of tweeting out some maybe advice to Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurts. Vinny says, no QB battle at Alabama in my eyes. Tua starts, and Hurts moves positions and plays at a high skill level still. In doing so, it helps his draft stock. What do you guys think? Hashtag Bama QB battle. I love the fact that Vinny Cincinnati is throwing the hashtags out there. Well, he got a response from another high-profile guy, the former Florida quarterback, and I guess in a roundabout way, Alabama quarterback too, Luke Del Rio, who said, totally agree. Phenomenal ball player, but not an NFL quarterback. Take the Braxton Miller route, who you may remember from Ohio State. Start the transition against lesser competition, he means at the college level, compared to the pros, and you'll be going up against the guys you'll be going up against at the next level. So from Luke Del Rio's perspective, from Vinny Cincinnati's perspective, this couldn't be more cut and dry that Jalen Hurts should just switch positions and go be a wide receiver. Do you agree with these guys?
I don't agree with them quite just yet. And listen, you say Vinny Cincinnati, ex-Bama football player. So does Luke Del Rio. Luke Del Rio spent some time in Tuscaloosa as well. And so, I understand everybody has their perspective on it. I understand what Vinny Cincinnati's perspective on it is. I mean, both of these guys, Vinny Cincinnati being a coach's son, Luke Del Rio being a coach's son, have been around a ton of football.
Good point. Both coaches' sons.
They both kind of see the writing on the wall. They both see what the trend is. They both understand the ups and downs of the different positions. They've both seen a ton of quarterback play. And so I understand why they have their own opinions of what should happen. I've actually kind of moved on to, will there be a winner, will there not be a winner? When will Nick Saban call this quarterback competition to, I think as of now, in my own eyes, I think they're vying for reps. I think it's about a percentage of what number of plays you're going to have against Louisville, against some of the teams you're going to have to start the year, because I don't think either one of them will be benched throughout. I don't think either one of them will only get reps with the ones in that first game. I think the way it's starting to shape up to me is, how can you fit Jalen Hurts within this offense? I agree with them. I think Tua is cut and dry above as a passer, but Jalen brings a lot of things to this game too, and I'm not ready to discount him yet.
Kevin Deming in the Facebook comment section says he agrees with Vinny Cincinnati on this, that Jalen Hurts should switch positions. My problem with that, though, from Alabama's perspective is, if Jalen Hurts moves over and starts playing wide receiver or H-back or something like that, then you're left with Tua Tagovailoa as your starter, and I do think that Tua is superior to Hurts here, but you're left with Tua as your starter, and I'm going to presume Mac Jones your backup.
Yep.
I don't think that Mac Jones right now, and this is sight unseen, I haven't seen Mac Jones play, but I'm just going to make an assumption here. I don't think that Mac Jones right now is an SEC champion or national champion level backup. I think that you want your backup quarterback to either have a likely chance of succeeding or to be a guy that's had some experience so you sort of know what you're getting. Yeah. In Mac Jones' case right now, we don't. So is it better for Jalen Hurts to play a different position for his NFL future? It very well might be. But this is where Alabama's best interest and Hurts' best interest might not exactly coincide here, because I think Alabama needs Hurts to be a quarterback. I think he's a pretty effective and potentially impressive backup. And right now, you probably need that.
Yeah, you definitely do. And I agree with you. I don't know. I've heard a lot of good things about Mac Jones, but is he, a national championship caliber type quarterback with all the talent he's going to have? I don't know. I don't know that he's as good as Jalen Hurts. And so I'm with you. I measured up. I think there needs to be a role for both players, because when I look at Jalen Hurts, he's a great offensive player. I'm not sure what he plays, though. The running back position's too deep at Alabama. I don't see him being a slot wide receiver. I don't know the quick twitches there that you want out of a guy like that. So I look at Wildcat quarterback and think, you know what, he could be very dangerous in late game situations and on certain third downs. I don't know that it has to be so much a position switch. I just think it has to be a switch in what you're asking of him.
I watched him play in person just one time this year. It was obviously the national championship game, and I don't want to overhype this too much because obviously there's a chance that I haven't seen every running quarterback play, so this is a difficult statement to make. He's the most dynamic running quarterback I've ever seen. He really, really is, and he leaves so much to be desired as a passer. But y'all, as a runner, he is the absolute truth. So I feel like he does need to be on the field somehow. I don't know if he can catch or not. Not everybody who can run can also catch. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if he can catch. But in terms of having the football in his hand, the big body, but also that elusiveness to make guys miss, he is such a good athlete. He needs to be doing something, but he's inferior to a Tagovailoa as a quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree. And honestly, I don't know how he would match up in the running back core at all because you mentioned it. Listen, as a running quarterback, he is dynamic. As a running back, I don't think it's that way. You have to have guys that can get behind their shoulder pads, can pick up the extra 2 and 3 yards, be able to press the hole, cut laterally, get up the field. I think as a running quarterback, he is dynamic. So allow him to continue to do some of those things. And it's like I said, it's a percentage to me. Does Tua get 70% of the snaps? Maybe. If Jalen Hurts has those other 30% and he's allowed to be dynamic in those snaps, I think he could be dangerous.
Angel Daughtry on Facebook says, Jalen Hurts brought us to the championship. People have their ups and downs. I wish people would stop. In other words, the former player saying he should switch positions. For Angel's taste, that's too much too soon. But it is worth pointing out here that we're going to see this side-by-side evaluation. Some this spring into the summer, and at some point in time, Hurts has got to outplay Tua Tagovailoa, and I'm not quite sure that's happening. I want you to hear some audio here from Nick Saban from over the weekend. Now, you got to remember, this is a somewhat injured Tua Tagovailoa. This ought to be a quarterback that Jalen Hurts can easily best during a scrimmage situation, but I'm not quite so sure that's necessarily the case, at least based on Nick Saban's description. Here is Saban talking about the scrimmage and his two quarterbacks. Take a listen to this.
Well, first of all, I don't have a time frame, so how could it affect it? I mean, you have a time frame, I don't. All right, so from your perspective, maybe I should ask you the question from my perspective. If there's no time frame, how does it affect it? I can't answer that. I don't think that any time a player gets hurt at any position, all right, that he should be penalized for that. All right, so, does it give other players more of an opportunity to show what they can do? Absolutely. But he was able to, he probably got, 15, 20 snaps today, something like that. And early in the scrimmage, and did well, so, Jalen, I thought, started out a little bit slow, but he really, made some really good plays as the scrimmage went on, so we were encouraged by that as well. So, look, this is not something that we're going to keep score on. All right, so when you ask me this question, I can't really give you any answer that is going to satisfy your needs.
So Saban kind of pushed back on a couple things there. The timeline for when Tua Tagovailoa is perfectly healthy and exactly what the comparison goes. If he were here right now, he'd probably want to strangle me for trying to read into what he deliberately tried to leave as sort of an open-ended type comment. But what I heard there is an injured Tua Tagovailoa played pretty well in 20 snaps, and Jalen Hurts, it took a while to get going during the scrimmage. This is the time that Hurts ought to be really making a case for himself, and based on that description right there from Nick Saban, it doesn't sound like he did.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting topic, too. And you mentioned Nick Saban would probably, listen, I wouldn't put it past Nick Saban would probably calling Vinny Cincinnati and being like, hey, man, can you keep the lid on the Twitter?
Yeah.
Don't hashtag Bama quarterback battle. And so you're right, there is that feeling from Nick Saban. And I think, listen, you can just look at the comment section. You guys look at the Facebook comment section right now. There are so many polarized opinions about this topic, about what Jalen did, about what Tua did, what the ceiling is for both. It goes from he needs to switch positions, to switch teams, to he should be the starting quarterback and he'll be in the national title game again. Everybody feels such a different way about Jalen and how you feel about Tua that, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and we're going to see it play out.
A couple more comments here. Elizabeth Spurlock Kerr on Facebook says, get off Jalen. I'm with Jalen 100%. He does still have his supporters. It's worth pointing out here, and you just kind of touched on this.
Yep.
Every time this subject comes up, even though for me it's pretty clear and cut and dry that Tua Tagovailoa is the better of the two quarterbacks, Hurts has plenty of fans in Tuscaloosa.
I agree.
Tuscaloosa.
It honestly, it's like 50-50. It's like, half the people really think Tua is the guy to get this offense to the next level and to be a record-setting style of quarterback. And a lot of people, the other 50%, feel comfortable with what Jalen is and think he can get him back there too.
Also, one more point here. Mike and Michelle Tankersley says, don't compare Jalen Hurts as a running quarterback to Michael Vick in his prime. All I'm saying is, and Bo Molinari sort of also points this out a little bit as well, that he would have thrived in those Nebraska 1980s teams. I also think about like Tommy Frazier of the mid-90s. I do think it'd be really fascinating to see Hurts as a true option quarterback in one of these sort of old school 80s, 90s style wishbone option offenses. I think he could have gone down as one of the all-time greatest to ever do that. I mean, y'all, I'm telling you, watching him in person, he is an amazing runner, but he is very, very average as a passer.
It leaves a lot to be desired. And listen, I've talked from everybody from coaches on the staff about this to your grandmother. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has a different opinion. And the one thing that is known is Jalen is an incredibly dynamic runner in the open field. I'm not sure what that brings you down to down in a position change. I don't know. I don't think he fits as an H-back. I don't know that you trust him in protections as a running back. I don't know what that brings you. So that leads me back to keep playing quarterback and make sure you manage the opportunities that he's getting within this offensive system.
Let's do item number 2 here on our SEC Country Live First in 10 list. Sort of an interesting thing going on there in Tuscaloosa with Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. You could say the same thing about what's happening in Georgia, where you have a fairly well-cemented incumbent starter in Jake Fromm, but one of the nation's top recruits of the class of 2018, Justin Fields, as a backup who's pushing to get himself some playing time. Now, last week here on SEC Country Live, we talked about Kirby Smart's statement that maybe Justin Fields, the freshman, had hit a bit of a freshman wall with his development this spring. But on Saturday, Kirby Smart sort of pushed back against that notion, saying that way too much got made of that by people like me who sort of talk about this stuff for a living. Here is Kirby chastising the media, which he loves to do.
Y'all took that and really ran with that. I referenced the freshman, and then y'all completely threw it into like it was just him. That kid is really not like that. He's very intuitive. He's very smart. He picks things up well. So that was somebody blew that way out of the water. When I say hitting the wall, there's times where they kind of don't do as well as maybe we'd like for him to. And I was really talking about the other freshman, not so much him. And he didn't have his best day after that either. But, this week he's been very efficient, made good decisions.
So what I can't help but notice is relatively complimentary there of Justin Fields. Stark contrast to Dan Mullen, who really never says anything all that complimentary about Emory Jones right now. You can sort of look at some other quarterback situation. We saw a couple Auburn quarterbacks, and we'll talk about this later. I don't know that Joey Gatewood looked great for Auburn on Saturday. I don't know that Malik Willis looked great for Auburn on Saturday. Kirby seems relatively happy with how his number 2 offense played during the scrimmage, and Justin Fields in particular. That is somewhat meaningful to me that Justin Fields is, at the very least, now we'll find out years from now if he lives up to the hype of being, a 5-star quarterback, but he's ahead of a lot of freshmen around this SEC right now.
Well, I think that's one way to look into it. I don't go that far down that road as far as the way I see Justin Fields right now. I think Kirby Smart is just being calculated in the fact that Justin Fields needs to be his backup quarterback. Emory Jones does not need to be the backup quarterback at Florida right now. They have other quarterbacks on the rosters, and you can read what you want to in that statement. What I read from Kirby Smart is, this kid just got here. He's just now learning the offense. I don't want to damage him by going out and saying that, he doesn't look very good right now. And so I think you're going to kind of tiptoe around that. You're going to allow him to establish himself. And I'm not coming out and saying that Justin Fields hasn't looked good. I'm just saying that Kirby Smart's going to be careful not to say that he doesn't look good. I think he understands what he has in his
the one thing that Kirby Smart did say, and this is kind of interesting, and it actually kind of reminds me of something that you said on the show last week. He sort of went into some detail about how evaluating Justin Fields in one of these scrimmages is actually somewhat hard to do. Here is a pretty candid Kirby Smart. This is kind of funny.
It's hard in a scrimmage because we're not tackling him. So a lot of that falls on me and the official. So you say, can you tell more? Can he take off running and do it? It's just like a practice because we don't hit him in practice. So I try to be as fair as I can. And, I get a bunch of shenanigans from the offensive sideline. If I call it a sack, they all disagree with me. So I try to put it on the official. And we got to go back and watch it. But I try to give them the benefit of the doubt because it's hard to say whether you would have tackled the guy or not.
Based on what you've said about these practices, obviously you were a big-time offensive lineman at Alabama. What Kirby describes there sounds so similar to what you've said before. Defensive-minded head coach thinks everything's a sack.
Everything.
You know, the offensive players are like, he would have broken free from that because he's obviously a running quarterback. So in a roundabout way, it is sort of tough because in a game, obviously Fields, even in the grasp, is going to shake free, and at least you'd think going to make some guys miss and keep plays alive. That's obviously not a part of scrimmaging. What Kirby says there reminds me of things that you've said on the show in the past.
It's so funny, and I was going to bring this up later talking about the Auburn game on Saturday because Gus Malzahn, an offensive-minded head coach, comes out and says, well, you know, Malik Willis on the goal line, we let him run, but if I'd have just let him run all day, he'd had 100 yards rushing. Like, you know, he would have been out of there. He'd been down the sideline. He'd had 100 yards rushing, and that's the difference. Dan Mullen, he comes out and talks about it as well, that you're trying to kind of get between some of these things. Everybody on that side thinks it's a sack, and everybody on that side thinks it's a 100-yard touchdown run.
All right, a couple of YouTube comments. Katie McCarty says, insiders who've been watching scrimmage say Fields has definitely been nothing short of wow. So there you go. Insiders are saying Fields is having big-time practices. By the way, we also have a YouTube commenter now named Mike Johnson's dad. So someone is clearly trying to get Mike stirred up. He says that Fields is far above all four of the Gators' quarterbacks. I mean, at this point in time, Florida would trade half its roster for Justin Fields.
Yeah, they probably would.
They'd do a Herschel Walker trade.
They probably would love to have Justin Fields on their roster. I don't know the college team that would not love to have Justin Fields' upside and ability on their roster. I really don't. I'm not ready to say that he automatically makes the Gators better this year. I don't know that. I haven't seen enough of Justin Fields to know that he makes the Gators better this year, but I think in the long run, 4 years of it, yeah, you'd love to have it.
So, listen, I'll totally acknowledge that one of the things I'm guilty of doing too much, too often, is probably reading into what these coaches say, especially these coaches like Kirby and Saban, who hate to have this sort of speculation about their words. But in all honesty, would you at least join me in this? That Kirby Smart is well aware of the hype around Justin Fields.
Yes.
And well aware that hype could potentially cause a problem for him his quarterback position. If there was any window to sort of, downplay that and sort of, act like Justin Fields was not quite ready, that Justin Fields was truly hitting that freshman wall, don't you think Kirby would look for that opportunity to do that, just sort of quiet down blowhards like me that want to talk about Fields all the time?
Well, I thought that's what he was doing when we talked about the wall in the first place. We come out and talk about it and say, boy, this is just something that happens. And I'm trying to get Justin Fields back, and I'm trying to say, listen, this is something that happens. You have to adjust on the fly in the spring. You get to a point where all of a sudden you feel like your head's going to explode. You're 6 practices, 7 practices in, and you have to have time for that all to settle. And so I think that opportunity has come and passed. I just think that Kirby at this point knows that this guy is his backup quarterback. This is not like we're red shirt or no red shirt or a Tua Jalen situation. This guy's going to be your backup quarterback. I don't think there's any danger in my mind right now of Jake Fromm being beat out. So you just tiptoe around it.
Terry Crews in the YouTube comment section, in terms of what Florida would do with its quarterbacks, we talk about making trades. They said they did trade a quarterback for at least a shot at Justin Fields, Matt Corral, who was a commit, and they kind of maybe slow played him, and Corral ends up at Ole Miss, and maybe the rest is history. Greg Steele over in the Facebook side upset with me on that. Greg, I kid. Yeah, I mean, this is all in jest and all in fun.
I don't know, Greg. I got your back, Greg.
Greg's taking plenty of shots at me, so maybe it's all fair there.
Yeah.
Let me do item number 3 instead here on our SEC Country Live 1st and 10 list. And I want to play for you some audio of Jeremy Pruitt. And what is interesting for me on this is what all coaches say, but boy, it seems like it's taken us a while to get there when it comes to Tennessee. Pruitt, the Nick Saban disciple, cut from very much the same cloth of Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart and others, always about defense and physicality and being tough. Well, he's finally talking that way about his own team here now. Here is Jeremy Pruitt coming off the weekend, in which he didn't think his players were physical enough.
First time really going live. One thing that just jumps out to me is got to be a much better tackling team. Guys need a little bit better form to finish. On the offensive line, we need to learn how to finish at wide receiver. Anytime the ball's out in the perimeter, the one thing I didn't see today, I didn't see our offensive players, our old linemen going and peppering the defensive players, knocking them off the ball carrier.
Where's this been from Tennessee? Because it seems like the last couple of weeks, it's not a criticism, I'm just more curious. I'm actually curious about your opinion and just sort of curious about the whole subject. The last few times we've heard from Jeremy Pruitt, it's all been about how exciting the offense is going to be and how much fun to watch they want the play calling to be. Tyson Helton talked about that. Even Pruitt himself was like, when these 11 guys are clicking on offense, they're really fun to watch. But for me, and maybe this is a prejudice I shouldn't have, fun to watch and physical almost seem to be at odds with each other. fun to watch is about finesse. Physical is about going out there and just sort of, manhandling an opponent and actually making a game somewhat boring. Alabama's game sometimes can be boring because they're just manhandling people to the point of submission.
Right.
Did it take Jeremy Pruitt too long to get to this point? Because this is what Tennessee's really missing, right?
No, I don't think it took him too long at all. We actually crossed this bridge last week talking about it a little bit. What are we putting together here? Is this a pro-style offense with Keller Christ at quarterback, or is this some kind of explosive over-the-top offense where you're taking a bunch of downfield shots and you have a running quarterback in Jared Garantano? I don't think that they really know about it yet. And I think to me, this kind of goes along with how Jeremy Pruitt has sounded, just to me, just with my ears knowing Jeremy Pruitt all along. This is him saying, listen, we can be good. We have the ability to be good. We have the players to be good, but we're not there yet. We're not getting it done on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. He talked about leadership. He talked about accountability. He talked about where the leadership could come from. He says, listen, I've been a part of a ton of teams, and sometimes it's a coaching staff, sometimes it's one guy, sometimes it's a group of guys. They don't have that yet at Tennessee. I've talked about it before, the leadership thing. That's one of the most understated things about Nick Saban. It's become one of the most understated things about Kirby Smart, and it's what Jeremy Pruitt's trying to find up at Tennessee. How do you develop those leaders on those Saturday practices where it's hot outside or it's rainy, nobody wants to go out and do it? How do you get those guys to stand up and say, we've got to go to work today? That's what he's looking for.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously know this better than me because not only did you play football, but you were a leader on the teams that you played on. To me, football is the unique sport in that you have to be good to be a leader. Like if you watch baseball, it's like the backup catcher.
David Ross.
Yeah, that's been playing for like a million years. Like that guy's a leader, even though he's like the worst guy on the roster, just because he's been around. But in football, like the guy on the end of the bench is not the leader, right? You got to be on the field, taking the hits. And that's really what it comes down to. Football is a physical sport. No one wants to be led by someone who's not out there taking those licks and taking those blows. So it's going to be tough for Tennessee to establish its leaders until it establishes what Jeremy Pruitt just described there, which is sort of a renewed sense of toughness. I mean, Tennessee got pushed around a few times by some of the teams that Vols fans do not like getting pushed around by, and that's the issue that Tennessee's got to address here.
I think that it's also the position makeup, and it's also about health. Listen, Darren Kirkland's one of those guys, could be a leader for you. What are you getting health-wise? Trey Smith would be a huge leader, a huge stalwart on the offensive line that you build around. Don't know what you're getting. You don't know who's playing quarterback. Keller Christ just shows up in the locker room. You don't know what you're getting at running back. Madre London just shows up. Is Jawan Jennings going to play? There's these positions that these guys should be at the top of their game and at the top of the roster and at the top of their position group. A lot of question marks around Tennessee. I think that's what Jeremy Pruitt's referring to when he says we've got to identify the guys we can lean on and that can be leaders.
Let me get a few Facebook comments here. Bradley Burgess says, Pruitt, baby. I understand why Tennessee fans would be excited about him. I think he's an interesting young coach. I think Vols may be in good hands with him. Teresa Stewart says, she's a Vols fan as well. She says, we are getting some big guys. They should already be taught. But here's the thing. It's like, are you going to teach that toughness, or is this the kind of thing that you have to find guys at the high school level who sort of play with that mean streak already?
It's got to be both. It's got to be both. You have to bring that culture in, but you can also separate those guys when it comes time to make a play. When it's 110 degrees outside, like I said, and it comes time to make a play, who's going to stand up and make sure they're practicing to a certain you kind of level of intensity? Those tough guys will come out, and they'll be physical, and everybody else that can't kind of practice that standard will have to go the other direction.
R.J. Ellison, apparently also a Tennessee fan, says, Pruitt's bringing back the toughness to the power T. I can't wait to see what he does over the next few years. I know y'all get tired when I make Georgia comparisons, but in this case, it's probably an accurate comparison. When Kirby, as a first-time head coach in 2016, took over Georgia, I don't think he thought Georgia was tough enough either. And in a lot of games, you know what? He let their lack of toughness sort of be hung out to dry. He called those running plays over and over again, even though they weren't working.
Yes.
He wanted to sort of establish a standard for the program, even if the players in the roster weren't good enough to meet that standard. And you know what? Georgia lost some games because of it.
Oh, I know it.
So at Tennessee for 2018, you got a choice. You can be fun, Tyson Helton, up-tempo play calling, really, doing some creative things offensively, or you can maintain a standard of toughness where you ask guys to do something they may not be physically equipped to do, but it makes you better in the long term.
Yeah.
What's the best choice for Jeremy Pruitt there?
Yeah, it's got to be a mix, right? I think it has to be a mix. And let me tell you, let me just give y'all some insight, too. I mean, this is one of those things where Nick Saban's first year at Bama, you don't game plan. You don't game plan around people. You don't say, boy, that defensive end rushing this right tackle, that's going to be tough for us. You do to an extent, but then you let that guy go out and play and prove his toughness and prove his ability and say, you know what? What's that guy going to do when his back's against the wall? You go out there and prove that on the field, and they've got to find that right mixture of ability with leadership.
Here's a very provocative question from Bo Molinari. Now, Bo's not a Tennessee fan. He's a Texas A&M fan, but this is a great question. He says, if Jeremy Pruitt finishes with a worse record than Washington State, that's Mike Leach's team, and Leach was in the mix for that Tennessee job based on some of these emails, that have been released recently. Can we all agree that the SEC would have been more fun with Mike Leach as a coach instead of Jeremy Pruitt? For me, I'm going to say no, because I will grant you that Leach quickly would be able to make a bigger impact than Jeremy Pruitt is. But over the long haul, Mike Leach is too much of a clown to win at the highest SEC level. I mean, this is a guy that's a sideshow circus act that works in outposts like Lubbock and Pullman, but it's not going to work in Knoxville, Tennessee. Jeremy Pruitt may be a failure short term, but if he can win just enough to stick around for the long term, he's going to bring in players and bring in an attitude to Knoxville that Mike Leach is not capable of.
I'm gonna agree with you. Listen, give me the next 10 years of Jeremy Pruitt defenses against the next 10 years of Mike Leach's offenses, and I think Jeremy Pruitt wins 8 of them. I really do. I think that tough style of defense, God knows how to coach the secondary, knows how to cover these spread out offenses. I think you're right. Mike Leach in year one might have had a better opportunity to knock off some teams, but in the long run, Tennessee is going to be much healthier, particularly on the line of scrimmages, because of the brand of football that Jeremy Pruitt brings to Knoxville.
I like Stephen Early's comment. He says, Pruitt is sort of a buzzword name for the SEC. Mike Leach more of a Pac-12, Chip Kelly type coach, track stars, and oddball play calling. That weird crunchy granola stuff works out west. It does not work in the SEC. I'm just telling you, it doesn't.
Crunchy granola
That's
stuff.
what it is. It's like crunchy granola play calling. This guy's talking about pirates, and he's wearing like Birkenstock sandals. That stuff is not going to work down here. I'm just telling you.
And I'll give you credit too. I mean, you stuck behind that even when Mike Leach came out as a front runner for the job. You were saying all that stuff all along. To me, I looked at it and said, well, you know what? This kind of ho-hum thing where it's, you know, everybody's goody-goody, that hasn't worked in Knoxville either. And then you had the bad boy attitude with Lane Kiffin. That didn't stick in Knoxville either. And so I think Jeremy Pruitt's perfect at this point in time for the Tennessee program. The question is, how long does it take for him to get them back to the level they should be at? That's what we're up in the air about.
All right, let's do item number 4 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. And I think I am now officially, you know, you watch the cable news, they're calling elections. Enough precincts have reported. I am now calling the LSU quarterback race. So Ross Dellinger, who's a really good reporter, does a good job covering LSU for the Baton Rouge Advocate. He tweeted out some passing stats from the scrimmage. He's got the old stat scrimmages on the right, the new stat scrimmages on the left, and they're essentially the same as they've always been. You know, Miles Brennan goes 10 to 15 for 93 yards, throws a touchdown and a pick. This is the most recent scrimmage. Justin McMillan just 3 of 11. Lowell Narcisse just 3 of 11. This is after, you know, pretty similar situation in the last scrimmage where Brennan was about 75%. The other two quarterbacks below 500 here, below 50%. Listen, I know McMillan's a runner, and the description we got of Lowell Narcisse the other day makes him sound like a really interesting, offensive prospect, athletic specimen. Miles Brennan's your quarterback at LSU. Can we stop this charade?
Yeah, you say it's kind of stayed the same since last time. I think it got worse. When you look at the passing stats, I think it might have gotten worse. And Ed Orgeron had a lot of good things to say about Lowell Narcisse on the ground. He really did. It kind of echoes exactly what I was saying about Gus Malzahn, talking about Malik Willis. Stats weren't there through the air, but you know what? This guy could have rushed for 100 yards, had we given the opportunity to. I think you're right, though. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to kind of cast this thing about Miles Brennan. It kind of brings to light for me what Ed Orgeron's kind of been talking about behind the scenes. Hey, we got the guy in that room. This has got to be the guy. I mean, it's not like which one is he talking about anymore, or is it a combination of the few? I think that you'll see a running quarterback in certain instances, but Miles Brennan has to be the guy going forward, and in my opinion, I think LSU fans need to get behind that.
So one of our, I don't even know if you really realize this, but one of our sort of most long-ranging arguments, one of the things we sort of have it out about for a long time is, going back to last year, who should name a starter during the spring and who shouldn't. Some schools are sort of better off not naming one. Alabama, for instance, you want to keep Jalen Hurts happy and keep him on the roster. I think some schools should because they want to rally around a guy and build around a guy. I'm going to say that LSU, coming off its spring game, which I believe maybe this Saturday, it's next couple weeks, whenever it is, I'm going to say that LSU is one of those schools I'm going to put in the category of should name a starter. Lowell Narcisse can transfer, Justin McMillan can transfer, who cares? You got to rally around your guy. It's clearly going to be Miles Brennan. He's not the running quarterback, but Orgeron's all over the place talking about how they want to pass. They want to be 50-50 run to pass. You got to have your best passing quarterback to do that. He's also, put himself on the line out there saying that this is going to be the year we find the quarterback that LSU fans have been looking for quite some time. You got to name Miles Brennan as your starter to get yourself some momentum going in the summer. They don't need to hold this competition over into the summer.
It's going to be shocking, but I actually agree with you. Okay. And I don't know that here's what I'll say. I don't know that I see any other school in the SEC like that right now. I don't know if that benefits you anywhere else. I don't think that benefits you at Florida. I don't think it benefits you at Tennessee, at Bama, at Georgia, at Texas A&M, at Arkansas. I don't think it benefits you anywhere else other than LSU, because there's been such a dry spell and it's been such an Ed Orgeron talking about they have their guy. When spring practice is over with, there is no downside to naming this guy your quarterback and saying, this is our guy of the future. Next year, we want to go out and be able to win with him.
I want to get a couple comments here. Rick Keene on the LSU subject in a minute. Let me change the subject just real quickly because this is a pretty interesting comment from James is it Lawhan? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, James, on Facebook. We were talking a moment ago about like smash mouth offenses, what Tennessee wants to do. James makes an interesting point. He says if people would copy Saban, it will level out the SEC schools. What do you guys think about that? I think the point he's trying to make here, and this is kind of an interesting one, and it sort of factors into the LSU conversation we're having right now too, that the advantage of Saban's smash mouth style is the fact that they're more committed to that than other teams are, and it gives Alabama an advantage. If everybody starts playing the same way, and if everybody's equally committed to it, then the sort of like collective advantage that one team has is sort of diminished at that point in time because everybody's sort of trying to do the same thing, and the talent that's necessary to do that kind of stuff gets more evenly distributed. Right now you're seeing some of that at Georgia that Alabama would like to have. Tennessee wants some of that. It's kind of an interesting point that not everybody can be physical. There's only so many guys out there who are capable of playing physical football, big enough offensive linemen, talented enough running backs to establish dominance along the line of scrimmage. There's just not a lot of talent for everybody to play that way.
I agree with you, and I think that it spreads it out a little bit, but it's not like we haven't seen any other program go that route. I mean, listen, for everything you want to say about LSU, Les Miles lived and died on that bed of being physical up front and being able to run the football downhill. Jim McElwain, to an extent, tried to take that approach down at Florida, too. Brett Bielema was a more physical style of offensive coach. Although they ran a spread, he was a physical style of offensive coach in the running game. So it's not like nobody's attempted to do it. I just don't think you've had guys be as good as doing it as establishing that physicality up front and having the strength on the offensive and defensive lines.
Back to the subject of LSU, Rick Keene, who's a Florida fan, brings up an interesting question. We did some of the FPI data from ESPN on Thursday on the show, right? Rick says, how about the FPI prediction for LSU? Likely to go 6-6 this season? You know, I didn't see that specific number for LSU, but it doesn't sound too far off from what I would expect it to be, which I think shows you the pressure that's on Ed Orgeron to find his quarterback and really overcome underdog to Georgia, underdog to Auburn. That game's on the road. Underdog to Alabama for sure. You know, you maybe Mississippi State. I mean, you got a lot of games in which LSU is looking to be a point spread underdog right now.
No, I agree with you. It's going to be tough, and that's kind of why we go back to the statement I was just making about what's the downside of naming Miles Brennan your guy right now. I mean, what's the downside of doing it? Just say these other guys are going to have a role. Miles Brennan's going to be our quarterback because I think they are one of those teams that that just team-wide need to change the perception of what they are. By the way, any of you guys out there saw the Florida prediction of victories, did you see this? 8.1 from the ESPN FPI.
Right.
And you guys screened me when I said I think if Florida goes 8-4 next year. If you guys want to talk about the FPI, I'll go right their way. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Had a little bit of something to back me up.
There you go. By the way, speaking of LSU and quarterbacks, over on YouTube, Esteban Esteves, who's a terrific LSU fan, says whoever the quarterback is, Miles Brennan or somebody else, just need to make sure they throw the deep throws and don't hesitate to throw the checkdowns. Nickeling and diming kills defense just as much as the big plays. Sounds like Esteban is kind of right there with Orgeron, some other LSU fans are saying we want to be at least 50-50 run to pass. They want a lot more passing over in Baton Rouge. At least that's what some people are saying.
They're going to get it. I mean, they're going to get it because that's where the talent lies on this football team, especially if you can have Miles Brennan start to separate himself as a passer. And I'm looking, listen, I'm looking at the schedule right now for LSU this coming year. And 6-6 to me, guys, I'm not an LSU guy, but I'm telling you, I don't know if I can buy in a 6-6 for LSU.
Okay.
That's rough, man. I mean, understand where it comes from. Listen, you got Miami.
Underdog. I mean, I'm just saying.
They're underdogs, yes. I mean, you're going to be at Auburn after you play Southeastern.
FPI is not going to factor in winning as an underdog.
I know.
They're going to say if you're an underdog, you're more likely to lose than win.
Exactly. I don't know, man. I've got to have.
But you would agree they're an underdog right now in
a lot of these games.
Yeah.
They're going to be the underdog probably at Texas A&M to end the season. I don't know what the Mississippi State game is going to be, but that one played itself out on the field last year. It's going to be tough, but I have to think. You LSU fans, just tell me, 6-6, Ed Orgeron might not make it at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think he gets a third year. I think
at 6-6. That's
by the way, Shannon Burgess says I'm salivating in a possible 6-6 season. Shannon, I'm not an LSU hater. I mean, of all the teams I can be accused of hating, I am by no means an LSU hater.
Yeah, I agree with that one. You got to give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. The Florida over there, Tennessee, all those teams. BA doesn't get the benefit of the doubt, but LSU, I don't know. I just think 6-6 to me, Ed Orgeron might be fired. Right. You got to stop the bleeding at some point.
Yeah, I think. Look, I think they give him a third year. But you're right. He could certainly put himself in a tough sort of hot seat position if that were to go down. Let's do that on number 5 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10. Let's a lot of talk about quarterbacks here on today's show. Florida also has its spring scrimmage, another one over the course of the weekend, and another chance to update what's going on with the quarterbacks. Is there separation? Is one guy distancing himself from the others? Well, when Dan Mullen was asked about that, he wasn't really ready to say so. Here is Mullen in his own words.
No, not for me. I don't even paid attention to separation. You know what I mean? I'm watching all the guys and really worried about how we're getting better. You know, I mean, one of the things for me, and especially with where we are with a new roster, to me, you know, with everybody kind of starting over, is it's a long time before we have to make any decisions or play a game. So I'm not that concerned about that right now.
I also think that Florida is one of those schools that if it can name a starter, it should. Because, listen, at this point in time, I mean, you know, when you worry about Kyle Trask transferring, you know, Emory Jones is just a freshman. You know, if he's not the starter right now, no one can fault you for that. You know, Mullen says we're a long way away from needing to name a starting quarterback. But I feel like this program could use a guy to rally around the same way they were a little sour on Del Rio to start last season. I feel like there's a little bit of restlessness when it comes to another year of Felipe Franks. You know, I feel like Mullen needs to start selling a guy to his own fan base here. Quit running with the ROTC and start selling your quarterback to the fan base there.
I disagree about this one, though. I don't see why do it at this point. I think you still have two quarterbacks that are learning a completely different system than you were before. I don't think that you can look at 2 months under Dan Mullen for Kyle Trask or Felipe Franks and boy, you know, that guy's the guy. I think you have to give them all summer. You have to understand who the leadership is. You have to give them fall camp in order to be able to come out and talk about it, because these quarterbacks are similar. This is not an LSU where Miles Brennan's a thrower, Narcisse is a runner, McMillan's somewhere in between. These quarterbacks, Kyle Trask and Felipe Franks, they're along the same lines. And the last thing you want right now, as much as Gator fans might not want to see him as a starting quarterback, you're not any better off if Felipe Franks walks out the door before the season starts.
Yeah, and by the way, on Chomp Chat, which is the Florida podcast here from SEC Country, it sounds like while Dan Mullen's not, he doesn't even notice separation. He's separation blind.
Yeah,
listen, I don't even notice separation right now. It sounds like that maybe some other folks did see some separation, and maybe it came at the benefit of Felipe Franks, last year's starter. Here is Zach Abolverdi from Chomp Chat, our SEC Country Florida podcast, saying that it apparently was a pretty good day for Felipe Franks, all things considered. Here's Zach.
For Felipe Franks and for anybody that's trying to win this job and be the starting quarterback at the University of Florida and play for Dan Mullen, who's had some pretty good guys under center, you got to be able to take care of the football. And if you're Felipe Franks, that's the one thing that you have to improve on with your game. It's the biggest area that you needed to work on this spring. And it was, you know, your bugaboo in that first scrimmage. And to see that he, you know, showed some strides and improved a little bit in the second scrimmage is a good sign. I think that he obviously had to come and have a better performance after what he did the first time around, and just Trask seemingly kind of trending in that competition. So now, as we expected, Jeff, this thing was going to, you know, have its peaks and valleys, and guys were going to, you know, go up and down throughout practice. But I think now that we've seen two scrimmages and we've seen that this is pretty much a battle between those two, I think Saturday is going to give us an opportunity in the swamp, you know, for a game, obviously a spring game, to really, you know, see who can break even and try and go into the offseason with the edge.
I think what Zach says there at the end is really, really important. Dan Mullen can say, I don't even notice separation. But Florida fans are going to notice.
Yeah.
Florida fans are going to notice if it exists, if it doesn't exist. And at this point, I don't even know if it matters who. You know, Kyle Trask, who people seem to want to talk up here. Felipe Franks, who was the better recruit coming out of high school. Maybe, you know, some ups and downs that he showed in 2017. I mean, one way or another, this is all going to be on display for the orange and blue game. And we're going to find out for ourselves there. By the way, the Jeff that Zach referred to in that clip is Jeff Cardozo, his co-host. The two quarterbacks that he's referencing are Kyle Trask and Felipe Franks. We're about to find out for ourselves here.
Yeah, we definitely are. And Hardwire says Mullen not telling the media everything. I agree with that. Dan Mullen, listen, I'm behind you. I believe in your team. But if you're sitting there telling me you haven't noticed any separation, you're lying to yourself. One way or another, whether it's, you know, paper thin or not, Dan Mullen's breaking down the quarterback on every snap. He's watching the game, the game in practice film 10 times over. He's seeing who's making throws and who's not, and then he's not releasing stats after certain scrimmages. When you've already gone there with opening up your practices, and we've been able to see some of the film, we've been able to see some of the statistics you've had in that stadium. So he's right. It's all going to be on display. There's not going to be any more guessing games. You're going to be able to see who's the favorite, and I think that's a big deal going into the rest of the offseason.
And, based on what I think I know about Trask, neither Franks nor Trask is necessarily the prototype Dan Mullen style quarterback. No. So I don't really know what that means here, but this is a program. Mullen's the quarterback coach. He's supposed to be the guy that's supposed to be able to spin gold out of whatever yarn you give to him. It'd be nice to see some evidence of that.
Yeah, it would be. And listen, I don't want to get too excited for Florida fans, but you've got to be wondering, for the people that haven't seen Kyle Trask live, which not many people have, you've got to be wondering what Kyle Trask exactly is bringing that's making him kind of jump out in front of this Felipe Franks thing. He's not prototypical Dan Mullen, but he does, in a lot of people's opinions, at least from what I've read, fit in that kind of Alex Smith role, where he can be a good thrower with his arm and move around just a little bit better than Felipe Franks.
Are we really comparing Kyle Trask to a first-round NFL draft pick?
In Dan Mullen's offense, yes. I'm not going to compare him
Alex
to Dak
Smith
Prescott.
Was a first-round draft pick.
You're missing the point. This is what happens when we talk about compares. I'm not comparing Joey Gatewood to Cam Newton. I'm just saying they're a similar style of player. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying Kyle Trask is going to go out and be the #1 overall pick. When you talk about fitting within the system, I think that's what Dan Mullen's hoping for, is an Alex Smith type of quarterback.
Hashim Spikes brings up a really good point. The biggest, and this is just objectively true. There's no opinion to this. The biggest challenge Frank's going to have under Mullen is becoming more of a runner. His arm talent is already far greater than Fitzgerald's. I think he's talking about Nick Fitzgerald, the quarterback that Mullen had there at Mississippi State. And the first part of that is 1,000% true. And that's what I love about these videos we're able to show you from the Florida practice, where you see a lot of these drills are drills where you are putting that quarterback on the run.
Yeah.
It's that yep. It's that roll to your left or your right, firing into the to the target there. You are seeing, every one of those drills we show you in these quarterback Florida videos that we have, they're all sort of these Dan Mullen style, quarterback on the move passing drill type things.
And that's kind of what I mean when I talk about Kyle Trask, is that everybody last year, Felipe Franks has sneaky athleticism. He can escape the pocket and make the throw. But you have to be able to have the good footwork. You have to be able to move around a little bit. You have to be at least a little bit agile within the pocket if you're going to run Dan Mullen's system to the ceiling. That's why so much talk was about Emory Jones and what he can bring. And that's why everybody was down on Felipe Franks going into the system, because you have to have – it's not about pocket passing, and it's not about passing, and it's not about ratios. It's about moving around within the offense and being able to get it done with your arm at the same time.
Quick final Facebook comment. Rick King says, Kyle Trask is very accurate. That's what's most important, and so we'll see how that plays out. Rick, we appreciate your comment. Let me do item number 6 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. The Auburn spring game goes down on Saturday. Now, the weather, I guess, was terrible in the plains, so you didn't have a huge crowd show up. But Gus Malzahn, the Auburn coach, was complimentary of the fans who did brave the conditions and gave this assessment of what he saw at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Here is Auburn coach Gus Malzahn.
First thing, just like to say I appreciate our fans coming out. The forecast was miserable. It was raining all day until the kick, and so I really appreciate those guys coming out. Thought overall it was a good day. What really stood out to me is our defense played extremely well, and our second defense played well too, and they've done that all spring. Anders Carlson, our kicker, he's done that all spring too. That was very encouraging to see him out there kicking the way he has been up to this point in front of a crowd. Tailback-wise, our plan was to rotate those guys, especially the young guys, see what they could do, and they held on to the football. That was really, was my main thing, and you could see those young guys have a lot of ability, broke some tackles, did some good things, but and then our quarterbacks, it was good to see those guys out in front of a crowd. The thing with Malik, we missed a couple ones, over the top. I think we overthrew a couple, but he's going against one of the best defenses in college football, and that'll only make him better. But overall, both sides of the football got after it and had fun out there playing in front of our home crowd.
Dwayne Rourke, who's an Arkansas fan, says, I mentioned bad weather conditions at Auburn. He says conditions were even worse at Arkansas. 28 degrees, snow and sleet until about the second quarter. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, sounds awful.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, it sounds awful. I think they had reported about 7,000 at the spring game, which for all the talk about going to Little Rock, considering I think that's actually a pretty good number. If you really want to talk about 7,000 being attendance, it would have been tough for me to go.
So y'all know I do Dog Nation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, and on the show that I do every morning, I've actually been getting some grief from some of these a lot of Georgia fans about the fact that I've been a little too complimentary of Auburn, and I don't like being put in that position. I don't want to be complimenting Auburn. Obviously, I am a Georgia fan. I want to appreciate that rivalry. But what amazes me is how much people in the YouTube comment section, the Facebook comment section of both my shows, the SEC show, the Dog Nation show, there is such disregard of Auburn, it seems, at the expense of virtually every fan base in this league. I mean, you heard Gus Malzahn there. We'll get to what he said about his quarterbacks in a moment, but he really praised that defense. I mean, think about this right now, Mike. How many units, offense or defense, in the SEC right now could you say, you know what, that's a sure thing? There's only a small handful.
Yeah.
LSU defense probably, both sides of the ball for Alabama. I'm going to say both sides of the ball for Georgia. But, true proven units, there's not a lot of givens. Now, there may be some good ones, but there's some uncertainty with almost all these teams. The Auburn defense is one of those units that I'm going to say, you know what, I know for a fact that unit's going to be good in 2018. To the recipe of being a top 10 team for sure, I think it's really telling that Malzahn starts his sort of post-game remarks praising his defense. You don't always see that show up during spring games, but this Auburn defense is for real.
They're incredible. Nick Coe, I think, got defensive MVP honors from the spring game on Saturday, and it was very telling. I mean, listen, you didn't have Jarrett Stidham, you didn't have Cam Martin, you didn't have either one of your centers you expect to be competing when that opens up. You were down, obviously, a couple wide receivers. But the numbers were bad for these backup quarterbacks. For Malik Miller and for Joey Gatewood, Malik Willis. 8 of 20 for Malik Willis, 4 of 12 for Joey Gatewood.
Yeah.
I mean, that's bad. And it's like I told you last week when we left, though. What are we looking for from these spring games? Wasn't looking for anything from Auburn's offense because I knew that was a story going in. But it's almost like if you didn't think Auburn's defense could play a little better than you expected them to, they did. They were good in coverage. They were good tackling all over the field. They were good getting into the backfield. I thought they looked great.
Look, this is where I'm going to sound like a jerk, but at times you sort of have to be honest here. There's something fishy when certain quarterbacks sort of only play well when nobody's watching. Certain practices, certain spring games. Boy, so-and-so backup quarterback, and it seems like it's been one of these backup quarterbacks from Auburn in the case of Malik Willis a year ago, in the case of Joey Gatewood, at least so far this spring. When no one's watching, they're playing great. But when we have a chance to see with our own eyes, Gainesville, Florida can be a little guilty of this from time to time. We have a chance to see with our own eyes. All of a sudden, it doesn't quite match up with what the closed-door description was. Something's fishy when that keeps happening over and over again. And there are a few schools where that seems to always happen.
I got news for you. Nobody needs to cast stones in a glass house because every school does this. Every school has opportunity. And I've touched on this before with you, though. There's these scrimmages where these coaches talk about scrimmages are a big deal. You get out there, you get in the heat of the game, you have to deal with things yourself because this is what happens in practice. When you release these practice statistics, you get back there in the huddle, and the quarterback coach comes up and says, okay, your number one read's going to be over here, and then watch for that backside slant, if the linebackers flow too hard. You get in those live game situations, it's not there. All of a sudden, this bullet's flying at you. That guy touches you with a hand, and you're sacked, and you have to throw it downfield. And that's what really skews a lot of these numbers, too. And I agree with you. Every school in the SEC does this to an extent, but those numbers were a little bit alarming for me.
Brock Weaver, who's an Auburn fan, says 3 biggest takeaways from the Auburn game was Nick Coe's a man. Carlson, the new kicker, has got a great leg. He also says Boobie Whitlow going to be special. I do think the Auburn fans feel good about that running back situation right
CJ
now.
Tolbert and Boobie Whitlow. I don't think Cam Martin played. Asa Martin actually had a ton of carries too, which we've wondered on this show. I think when you were gone for that week, is Asa Martin a candidate for a red shirt? That's kind of tough to talk about, but with the depth they have at the running back position, I have to believe that Gus Malzahn feels really good about where they're at running back. I don't know if they're there along the offensive line just yet, but the depth of the running back, this is not going to be one of those running back competitions where, boy, somebody didn't take the reins. We don't really have a ton of talent in the backfield. They have a lot of able bodies in the backfield. Any number of the top 4, in my opinion, could rush for 100 yards on Saturday.
By the way, Greg Steele in the comment section, Facebook, Florida fan said, I'm talking about quarterbacks who sort of only play well when nobody's watching. He says, let's see what Justin Fields shows during the spring game, too. That's a very fair point for Georgia, who's kept Fields under wraps here this spring.
Yep.
No video coming out of Georgia spring practices. We'll see what he shows on G-Day. That's a really good point by Greg Steele there. All right, tough transition here, but serious subject for item number 7 on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Scary situation at Texas A&M last week as one of the players, Coda Martin, has a heat stroke. And details here are somewhat confusing, sort of difficult to come by. Jimbo Fisher did offer his assessment of kind of what happened here, and it seems just very strange. based on Jimbo's description. Take a listen.
He had a phenomenal practice. Actually, one of the best practices he'd had all year. And ran and did everything, was great. And like I said, it wasn't a he ate his meals all day, and the hydration, we check their hydration, who's hydrated, who's not. We can tell it before practice, everything. He was fully hydrated, but he's a heavy sweater, which can have that, you know what I mean. And I guess that's what happened. I don't know. I mean, I'm not the doctor part.
You understand this so much better than me because you did play. Things have probably changed even the sort of the decade since you were in college,
Yeah.
But what do you make of this? It seems like we have more of this kind of stuff now. Some people would say, oh, there's too much practicing indoors. There's too much, weight room, work gets done indoors as opposed to, guys used to do sweating outside. Is this just us trying to come up with an explanation for something that's not easily explained? I mean, what do you make of some of what we see in college football when it comes to this kind of stuff right now?
I think it's definitely what you're talking about I don't know that there is an explanation. I think that, and this is what I gather from this, because Cody Martin's dad has come out and talked about it and saying, boy, he ran like most of the plays at the end of the practice. Where this is what happens. You get guys in there, you have first, second, third string kind of depth chart along the offensive line. Well, then somebody gets injured. Well, then all of a sudden their backup has to shuffle over. And then he's playing right tackle on the other side. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, a guy like Cody Martin has 40 straight snaps. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're going through conditioning. And they mentioned in the article, too, that Cody Martin's a sweaty guy, kind of like me. I was like that my whole career. You have to watch for those things. And I just think that it's one of those things where you don't overreact to it. It wasn't a crazy hot day down in College Station, or they weren't getting enough water breaks. It was just a situation that was scary for everybody involved, and I think Texas A&M reacted the right way.
I apologize for not knowing this, and you may not know this either. I imagine this sort of GPS readouts these guys have in their practice jerseys is a fairly new thing. Is this the kind of thing that's being read in real time? And maybe in our comments section somebody knows. Yeah. Are you reading the GPS readouts in real time, or is it the kind of thing you only sort of re-download after the practice is over?
Yeah, I think from everything that I gathered when I played, because I wore one of these with the Falcons, it's for afterwards. Yeah. It's for, hey, how long does this guy need to be off his feet? What kind of nutrition does he need? How many IVs do we have to put back in this guy? What's the optimal level for him? Next time he practices, how many snaps he should get. So for everything I was involved in, it was something you kind of judged afterwards, but that technology could be way different now.
No way to do anything other than a cumbersome transition from that serious subject to something a lot less serious, but more fun here for item number 8 on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Your buddy, Scott Cochran, who's really been a bit of a star on social media since joining Twitter. He's one of the great strength and conditioning coaches in all of college football and a great motivator for the Alabama team. You may remember before the national championship, he earned some fame for crushing the runner-up trophy from the 2016 season as a way of saying they were coming for the real trophy in 2017. Well, I guess in a roundabout way that worked, and that's the sort of punchline of this joke about the current national championship trophy and the start of the unofficial start anyway to the 2018 season with the Alabama spring game coming up. Here's a pretty funny video from Alabama featuring Scott Cochran here.
Last year, because of our fans and because we were the loudest stadium in the country, we were able to bring this back to Bryant-Denny. But that was last year. This year, well, maybe I shouldn't. No, I shouldn't smash that one. We're going to keep this one. We'll make sure we keep this one. But April 21st, 1 o'clock, we got kickoff. Before the game, you can take a picture with the trophy. And then after the game is over, you can come on the field. We're going to let y'all come on the field. Now, that is cool. Get to have pictures on this field and get to actually run around on it. See you there.
I do. I mean, listen, nobody wants to poke fun at Alabama on this kind of thing more than I do. But pretending to sort of destroy the national championship trophy, remembering the runner-up smashing the trophy, I got to admit, I think that's kind of funny.
It is funny, and to me, it points at what I've always said about Nick Saban is he has his hand in everything. He understands perception. Boy, we got to keep this thing going. We got to find a way to where everybody doesn't get, oh, we won the national championship, I don't have to show up to the 8-day game. It's like, let's put a commercial out. Let's put Scott Cochran in there. Let's make fun of ourselves smashing trophies, and let's try to get everybody kind of amped up for what's coming up in a couple weeks.
Chad Clark says he sounds like Coach O's bro. There is that little bit of growl.
He's from Louisiana.
Does he talk that way all the time?
He's a LSU grad. I'm pretty sure that he
right?
graduated from LSU. Sure, he definitely has a little bit. His son's named Bo. There might be an X at the end of that. You know what I mean? Like he's
really?
Definitely
so he's
from
got
Louisiana.
the Louisiana thing
he's
going.
He's from Louisiana. So if he sounds like Orgeron, there's a reason for that.
That energy. I mean, does he bring that every single
day? All day. You step in his office, and I don't even know why he has a door in his office. Everybody in the building can hear the guy talking to you. He's sitting right in front of you. He's always like that.
So I got to admit, I thought that was kind of fun anyway. Let's move on to item number 9 here on our SEC Country Country Live First and 10 list. We had a Dwayne Rourke, one of our commenters in our Facebook comment section earlier, saying pretty miserable weather conditions in Little Rock for the Arkansas spring game on Saturday. Hogs do go after it, though. They release some highlights of what they're able to get done. Here is Arkansas's version of that. Take a look at some of this from the Arkansas spring game on Saturday. And obviously, Mike, you see, a little bit of energy here with the start of the Chad Morris era. What did you think Arkansas was able to kind of get done?
Yeah, not a lot. I listen.
Thanks, Mike. We're trying to sell this. Thanks for.
I'm selling it for. I looked at this and I looked at the game and I wanted to see something that stood out to me as why Arkansas is going to be better this year than they were last year. I think it's defense. I think you look at that linebacking core; they're very strong up the middle. I think that what's his name at wide receiver, Petway. I think he looks incredibly good. You have a tale of two different quarterbacks. One's a game manager, one's a risk taker. Cole Kelly wants to let it fly. The Story kid's more like, hey, let me not turn this ball over.
Yeah.
If it's not going to be the defense, because I think they will be a little bit better on defense this year. They gave up 36 points per game last year. They have to be better on defense this year, but I didn't see the all factor in Chad Morris's offense for me to say, boy, this offense takes a huge step. I've still got to see it from some of those offensive linemen. They have the talent there, but I'm not sure that right now they've got it all put together. I'm expecting a little bit more once the season comes.
One of the weakest factors of the final couple Brett Bielema teams was that offensive line. They just were really getting shoved around. I mean, I hope, and Tommy Bowden referenced this when we heard audio from him on the Bo Mattingly radio show at the end of last week. I hope they give Chad Morris some time here. It's going to take a lot of time. I just think that Arkansas is, on paper, the weakest team in the SEC, the least talented team of all. I don't know that the spring game necessarily proved that, but boy, it's going to take a while. It's just going to take a long time.
It is. It is going to take a while, and that's kind of what I mean as far as Chad Morris's offense when they take the field the other day. There was nothing crisp about it. You didn't sit there and, other than a couple of explosive plays in the passing game, you don't look and go, boy, this is going to be a scary offense to watch next year. They're not there yet, but I still feel the same way at this quarterback competition that I was talking about in Dan Mullen. It's going to take time. These guys have only been understanding these concepts for 2 months. Let them get into fall camp and let's see how this thing turns out. The defense has to get better. The defensive product I saw Saturday looked a little bit better, but I still want to see these, this offense start to click a little bit better, and I think they'll do that in time.
All right, let's move on here to item number 10 on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Kind of an interesting development for the third team that had its spring game on Saturday. That's Ole Miss, but the real story here is not what the Rebels did on the field there. Is it the Grove Bowl? That's what they call theirs at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. The Grove Bowl, not the big deal here. What's the big deal is currently Ole Miss stands as the #1 ranked team in the 2019 recruiting rankings, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite Team ranking. They got a flip from Mississippi State to sort of, build up to that level there. Matt Luke, the Rebels coach, was on with the SEC Sirius XM show, the one that Andy Staples and Peter Burns has. And Matt Luke's feeling pretty good about the situation at Ole Miss now that cloud of NCAA investigations kind of behind the Rebels. Here is Luke feeling good about the future there with the Ole Miss Rebels.
The cloud of uncertainty is gone. That really helps, and we do have a really good product to sell here. People enjoy coming to Oxford. They like the type of offense that we run. They really enjoy Coach McGriff's energy on defense, and this is it's a special place. So that this place sells itself. I'm
going to give an analogy that I know you'll like because you're a big NASCAR fan. Ole Miss being ranked #1 in recruiting is just like in NASCAR when the guy that's 14th place, stays out on the track. This is sort of a Danica Patrick special. She would do this every now and then. When everybody else would pit.
Fuel mileage race.
You stay out there, get yourself a lead lap for a moment. This is Ole Miss here. They got 15 commitments. If you don't realize that the recruiting rankings are based by adding up the score from all your commitments. Ole Miss right now has got 15. That's how it gets #1 here. But you know what? They can say we're #1 in recruiting. No matter how you get to that number, they get to call themselves #1 right now, which there's probably some value in that.
I agree with you to an extent, but I'm going to give Matt Luke the opportunity to shine here because it just hasn't come up that often.
I just gave him credit for it.
He's got to have the opportunity to shine, and I'm with you. Listen, if you go by their average ranking, I think they're the third lowest average ranking in the top 20 right now. But they've got 15, and Matt Luke's got those guys on board, and he's got these guys committed. And you mentioned Dywin Black, or however you say his name, Jerrion Ely, kind of a headline in this class. Those are good players. And for them to have 15 on board right now, Matt Luke mentioned it. The cloud's kind of gone, and to be able to get that many commitments this early in the process, I think it's a big deal for them. There was never any risk that we were looking at saying, boy, they're not going to finish first. I don't think they're going to finish first at all. I don't know that they finish within the top 10.
Yeah.
But for Ole Miss right now, to be able to have that many commitments on board, I think it's a big deal.
I mean, just as a comparison here, I wouldn't even mention Georgia. Just look at Texas A&M, who currently ranks 4th. Of their 8 commits, this is all from 24/7 Sports. They got a 5-star, 3 4-stars, and 4 3-stars. So half their players are 4- and 5-star guys. Whereas of the 15 commits that Ole Miss has, 12 of them are 3-stars. They do have 3 4-stars, so that's something.
Yeah, those guys that I just mentioned at the top of that class are people that you can build around. And I think it's – listen, Matt Luke's not going to be able to take the same blueprint at Ole Miss and do it the same way some of the other schools did. So I'm going to give him credit for this right now.
All right, let's close the show the way we always do. We're always looking for champions of life, our sort of fun way to finish off the show. And today, pretty creative thing. I guess there must be like an Indy Racing League race coming to Alabama. And as we're promoting the race – they had one of their drivers kind of pretend to be Nick Saban in sort of a Saban-style press conference. I thought this was pretty creative. Kevin Skarbinski tweeted this out. Take a look at this.
Will you all cooperate with me today so I don't get on SportsCenter tonight? Just want a little bit of cooperation, all right? It means ask good questions. I'm just kidding. Let's go.
Joseph, I know you don't like comparisons.
No, I don't. So don't ask me comparison questions.
The Dasani bottle
So,
pops up.
how does
Watch here in a
IndyCar
minute, the
racing
Coke
compare
bottle's
to
going to
SEC
pop up
football?
here, too.
Don't ask me questions about this. I've already answered that question 3 times. Can we all get in line so we can ask the same question?
So
here?
kind of on and on it goes there. I don't know a lot about Indy Racing League racing. I don't know Joseph here.
I know you would like
but now he's got the Alabama Saban, like the pullover, the zip-up pullover there. It's pretty well done, actually.
He actually hits it. He hits it right on, I think. I mean, his kind of impression of Nick Saban and the way he talks to reporters is it's pretty funny.
Now, we don't have time to show you the whole thing, but at the end, Skarbinski, who was a longtime columnist there for AL.com, pops in there and says, who do you think is going to start between Tua and Hurts? And then at that point in time, it kind of wraps up. This is actually pretty well done.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're racing over at Barber's Motorsports Park over outside of Birmingham, so it's usually a fun event.
Good for them. Hey, thanks for being with us on the show today. Appreciate all your feedback about the podcast audio. I believe that situation has been corrected. I got some glowing reviews from that on Thursday, so sounds good to know that all of you can hear us now and crystal clear. I don't know if it's stereo or what, but we're just glad you're able to hear us. Check out the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Android devices. Also, share the show with your friends on Facebook and YouTube. Let folks know that we're talking about the SEC here each and every afternoon. We appreciate you being with us, and we'll see you again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for another episode of SEC Country Live.